Welcome to Season 2 of the Empower to Heal podcast. I'm your host, Dena, and I'm so excited to take you on a journey through the ups and downs of motherhood. Together, we are going to learn, prepare for, and unearth all things motherhood, because I believe that exposure and awareness can lead to empowerment. So buckle up for an unfiltered, raw, and insightful journey. Motherhood is a beautiful journey, but it can also be overwhelming. Do you often find yourself feeling isolated, struggling to find balance, and yearning for a sense of identity beyond mom? Trust me, you're not alone. Join the Empowered Mamas Club, where you'll discover a supportive community of like-minded mothers. Gain valuable skills to navigate those highs and lows of motherhood, reclaim your sense of self, and become the engaged and present mom that you desire so that you can create cherished moments with your little ones. It's time to prioritize your well-being and rediscover the joy in motherhood. Click the link in the show notes and join us in the Empowered Mamas Club today. Hey everybody, thanks for joining. I'm so excited to kick off Season 2 of the Empower to Heal podcast. Now this season is going to be all about parenthood, especially motherhood. And I feel called to do a season on this topic in particular because of my journey and entrance into motherhood. There's a phrase that I wish I was taught, and I want this to be the topic of our first formal episode together. This phrase, this term, this developmental milestone is something that I feel like was largely looked over, and it's just not widely discussed in our culture. And this term is called matrescence. Some people pronounce matrescence, some people pronounce it matrescence, potato, potato, tomato, tomato. But matrescence is the developmental stage that you enter into when you begin planning, thinking about wanting to become a parent, a mother in particular. So for moms, there's matrescence, and for dads or partners, there's patrescence. And both are developmental milestones and developmental stages, I should actually say, that shift and change our biology, our chemistry, our brains, and our production of hormones. But they also shift and change our identity and how we see ourselves in the world. They shift and change our relationships. And it's a measurable developmental stage that we go through. And for some reason, we're taught about puberty growing up, but we're not taught about matrescence, which is very shocking because matrescence thrusts you into a stage of development and brain development that is akin to the development of a child up to the age of 5. So when you're little, your brain is still developing, and the majority of your brain develops in those first 5 years of life. And how it develops is from the brainstem up. What this looks like is starting with self-regulation and regulating the body, the heart rate, the breathing patterns, all of the unconscious things that keep us going, the body temperature, right? And we start forming and building our brain, leading all the way up to the front of our brain and the prefrontal cortex. And as we grow older, we have more capabilities to reason, to understand, to make sense of the world around us, which we're all familiar with, right? Well, our brain is growing at such a rapid stage and pace, I should say, in this stage of life from birth to 5. And after that, our brain is largely mainly developed, and the rest of the development that we're going to do are minuscule amounts of development compared to what you go through in those first 5 years of life until you have a baby. That's the kicker. Okay, so what does that mean and what does that look like? Let's start out by talking about matrescence a little bit more. So matrescence, like I said, starts and begins when you are identifying that you want to become a parent. Many parents try to conceive their child for quite a while before their child makes their way into their womb, right? And their brain is already starting to prime itself around what does it mean to be a parent and what do I want? What is life going to look like? And so we already begin to develop this. We already begin this stage of development. Now, when we're pregnant, as most of us know, the hormones kind of go crazy, right? And we have hormonal swings. We go through a lot of different cravings. We go through stages of complete exhaustion and then lots of energy. We enter into the nesting phase, usually in our third trimester, which is all about wanting to prepare and be in the right space and place and have everything ready, a home, a nest for our baby. And our society tells us to prepare for our child by preparing our home for our child. So we live in a society where, it's all about consumerism, and we think we need to buy all of these things so that we can have a good experience welcoming our child into our life and welcoming our child into our home. And so this oftentimes looks like the curated nurseries and having all of the baby supplies that we can think of, the cute little outfits and announcement information, sharing like gender reveals is a big thing right now in our society. And it's kind of all about like the view of what it's going to look like and how our space can be accommodating and beautiful and supportive for our little one and for us. And then we put a lot of emphasis on preparing for the birth of our child, right? Because the birth is something that's really scary. So when I found out that I was pregnant and found out that it was a viable pregnancy, I'll share more about that later. But when I found out, I began thinking about birth of my baby, and I was afraid and I was scared. And I actually went to my gynecologist, and she was talking to me about creating what's called a birth plan. And I shared with her that I don't want to be poked. I don't like needles. I'm terrified of them. And I don't want an IV. And she told me I had to have one. And I said, well, I don't want one. That scares me. And she said, well, I can't be your gynecologist then. Like all of the moms that I support in labor and delivery have to have an IV. And she gave me a business card of another practitioner that I can go see that would allow me to not have an IV. And that was a little rattling for me because it made me realize like, oh my God, this is scary and this is severe and they want you on an IV. Like it's that big, it's that scary. To me, when you have to go get an IV at the hospital, like your body's not well, right? And so I associated giving birth as my body's not well. Fast forward, I met a new gynecologist and I worked with a provider that had midwives at their practice so I could have a different approach to birthing my child. And then I wanted to work through reprogramming my brain so that I could shift the fear narrative, which creates tension, right, and contraction in my body, and replace that so that I could have an open, calm, relaxing body to support the birth of my child, right? And to shift through that labor season with as much ease as possible. Now, I put in all of this time and effort into preparing for the birth of my baby because that's the thing I was most afraid of. Growing up, I had always wanted to be a mom. I didn't think it was going to be hard. I worked in early childhood education fields for a long time, and then I became a social worker working with children and adolescents, and that's like my field of genius is working with children. And so I was like, oh, I've got the whole mom thing down pat. It's going to be fine. I just have to worry about the birth. And I was affirmed by our society that this is accurate. Just worrying about the birth is what we need to do because that's what they're all birthing classes and Lamaze classes and breath work to get through labor and delivery. But the thing that's missing, the biggest piece of the puzzle, is this entrance into motherhood. This season of matrescence, that this shift that we go through that is not talked about and not taught about. And so walking into motherhood with just planning for the birth and having my home nursery set up for my child set me up to feel like a failure as a mom. I was not prepared for nursing. I was not prepared for the hardships of nursing. I was not prepared to understand how this would change my relationship with my husband. I was not prepared, nor did I have the slightest inkling of how exhausted I would be, because I knew sleep deprivation was a thing, and people say sleep when your baby sleeps. I was like, okay, yes, I can do that. Like, all right, that's going to be fine. But I wasn't prepared for my fight or flight system to be on fire, to be in survival mode constantly, and have a lack of sleep on top of that, and have a lack of support on top of that. I didn't know what type of support I needed. I didn't know what to ask for or what to prepare for, right? And I'm not the first person in my family to have a kid, right? I'm not the first person in my friend group to have a kid. Yet I was still not prepared, because our society doesn't want to talk about the real aspects of motherhood. Because if we do, we're afraid we're going to be seen differently. Motherhood is all of the things. It is the most beautiful, insanely powerful, sacred role I have ever stepped into. And simultaneously, it is the hardest role I have ever stepped into. And it has challenged my nervous system and my thoughts on how I exist in this world. It has changed my identity, who I am. It has changed what I believe in, foundational beliefs that I thought I had. This is the impact of matrescence. This is what we need to talk about. And in addition to this, we need to talk about how matrescence is also an extremely huge milestone that impacts the neurological development of our brain, the connections in our brain. And I will share more about that with you in our next episode. So stay tuned. Are you on the brink of parenthood, eagerly anticipating the arrival of your little one? Take a proactive step towards preparing for the whirlwind journey ahead by joining our waitlist for the Empowered First Year Postpartum Prep course. Designed with your needs in mind, this online 4-week program offers a comprehensive blend of education, skill building, and community support to guide you through the demanding postpartum season. Don't navigate this transformative time alone. Click the link in the show notes below to join our next cohort and embark on your journey to parenthood with confidence. It has been an honor to share this space with you today on the Empower to Heal podcast, where we illuminate the strength you have within yourself to heal. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming episodes, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.